Welcome back to Torah on the Go. Whether you are walking your dog or on your Peloton, at work taking a break, or you just wanted to learn, we are so appreciative that you decided to spend some time with us. I'm sitting here with my partner, Rabbi Feinstein.
Good afternoon again.
And we are finally at chapter 2 of Exodus. We are about to meet the hero of the Torah. And that hero is born as a baby. Mm-hmm. We don't meet that hero as an adult, and I think that is a profound statement about the idea that all of us undergo the same kind of life journey. We meet Moses here in Exodus 2 with a story that there was a man from the tribe of Levi that approaches a woman from the tribe of Levi and asks her to go to coffee at Starbucks.
A miracle a Jewish boy committed.
And she says yes, and sure enough, they get married, and there is a baby born, and it is perhaps at the worst moment to have a baby boy in the history of the world. Right. And so this is the moment where the Egyptians are coming through houses and tossing Jewish baby boys into the Nile River, and so they take this baby boy and they hide it. But before they do, they look into the baby boy's eyes, and like every Jewish parent, they decide that this baby is tov me'od.
Kitov.
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 And
I've read that line 5,000 times before I stopped and asked what was the most obvious question. Was exactly what you said, which is, what Jewish mother doesn't think that her baby's the cutest baby ever, right? Kitov is not what a cute baby. It's not a Gerber baby box baby. Kitov is language from Genesis. She sees in the eyes of this child, she sees in this child's soul something of cosmic power, cosmic creative power, godly creative power.
Kitov is the line that the Torah uses at the end of every day of creation, right? That God looks at the world and it is good.
Right.
And the same language is then referenced, and the parents, or Moses' mother to be exact, looks into his eyes, looks at him, and decides he is Kitov.
Yeah. Now, if you go back to the beginning of the story, we could joke about a Jewish boy committing. That's also a miracle. As you said, there's genocide all around. So this incredible, the act that two people come together in love to build a family is an act of resistance. It's an amazing act of resistance. So you and I get to work with a wonderful soul, Herschel Fox. Mm-hmm. Herschel was born in a DP camp, a displaced persons camp, after the war, after the Second World War. Those who survived the Shoah, either in concentration camps or in ghettos or in Russia, in workplaces, they came and they had no citizenship. So the Allied armies gathered them up and put them in these giant population centers called DP camps. The birth rate in DP camps after the war is the highest recorded birth rate in Europe ever.
My aunt was born in a DP camp.
Right.
There were couples having children all over.
Because they'd seen so much death. They had tasted so much hatred, love and life. They needed to assert love and life.
And this is a recurring trope in Jewish history.
Right.
We see atrocity after atrocity after atrocity, and we turn back to life.
Right.
Nobody would have blamed the survivors of the Shoah if they had said,
enough is enough.
Enough is enough.
Right.
The world is a hopeless place. It's a dark place. There's no reason that anybody should be married. There's no reason that anybody should have kids. There's certainly no reason that anybody should ever walk into a shul again.
Right.
Right? Nobody would have blamed them for saying that. And yet they turned back into the tradition and said that we're going to rebuild.
Choose life.
We're going to choose life.
And
life. This is the story. Amram and Yocheved, Moses' parents, make the same courageous statement.
And the baby's born, and he's a boy. And she sees in his eyes something godly, something powerful. And they decide to hide him. And again, you got to imagine the Pharaoh's soldiers are going through, not just Pharaoh's soldiers, your Egyptian neighbors are watching. Yocheved, you're putting on weight. I mean, you understand what this means and how fraught this is. And I always imagine this. I always imagine her nightmares. I mean, here's a mother hiding a baby from certain death, and her nightmares, she goes to sleep with the baby at her breast, imagines that they're going to break down the door, steal the child, murder the child in front of her eyes. The horror of that nightmare and the courage of this mother, again, women are the heroes of the story, is so unbelievably remarkable. So after 3 months, she decides she's got to do something. Now, the ostensible reason is because he's crying so loudly. But I think it's also, at a certain point, she couldn't take the nightmares anymore.
Now, I don't think there's any way to understand the beginning of Exodus, especially chapter 2 and this entire Moses origin story, if you didn't study all of the book of Genesis. So you need to go back and listen to all of the last season. There's 30 episodes for you to listen to so there's a reference to the Genesis narrative of the creation of the world, and the next reference to Genesis is that Moses' mother decides, in order to save his life, she has to take the baby, place him. Now in English, the terrible translation is place him in a basket. But in Hebrew, the word that's used is teva, which is the same word as the ark that Noah builds during the great flood to save humanity, to offer hope to humanity, that even though the world all around them is being destroyed, even though this is such a horribly dark period, even though that perhaps God has looked at this kind of lawless violence all around them and says enough is enough, hope will come in the form of this ark, what's contained in this ark.
Right. And the wonderful kind of moment here that's subtle is one of the principal Egyptian gods is the god Isis. The myth of the Egyptian pantheon is that the god Isis is born out of the river. His mother finds him floating down the river in a basket. And the Bible takes that Egyptian myth and makes it ours.
And not only that, the irony of this entire story is that the Nile River is precisely the place where Jewish baby boys are supposed to go. They're supposed to go there through the Egyptian hands in the hopes of murdering them. And she takes Moses and puts him in a basket on the Nile River and floats him down the Nile River and says, what happens now is up to God.
Yep.
And she, and I think this is the most Jewish moment of the entire Torah, perhaps. She says it's up to God, basket in the river. And Moses' sister, one of the great heroes, Miriam of the story, says it's up to God and it's up to me. And she goes into the banks of the river and stands by the basket to watch over him.
And just as a note, because you know who I'm talking about, we have a dear friend, Mrs. Cinder, Rita Cinder, who at the age of 10, her mother put her on a train from Vienna. The family was very prominent, Viennese family. The Nazis were coming, and they knew that there was no future in that city. And there was a thing called the Kindertransport. They would take children from the age of 10 or 11 under. And Rita's mother put a 10-year-old Rita on a train toward England, kissed her goodbye, and thought they'd never see each other again. And that scene, when Rita tells me that story, I cry every time. And that's exactly this story, right? I know that certain death is coming for my child. And you put the child in the river. It turned out that in Rita's case, an incredible miracle happened. Her parents survived. Her sisters survived. They all were reunited in England. But 10-year-old Rita on that train thought she'd never see her mother again. And Rita's mom thought she'd never see her child again. Yocheved thought she'd never see this baby child again. Put him in the Nile, floats him down the Nile, hoping, dear God, take care of my baby.
Time and again in Jewish history, parents choose to preserve the life of their children, even when they know that the future is so dark for them. Again and again, whether it be the Kindertransport, whether it be not too many years before, Shimon Peres in his autobiography talks about leaving his grandfather's side for the first time in his life, and his entire village that he was from in Eastern Europe gathered up in the synagogue, burned alive in the synagogue. These were heroic acts.
Yeah, incredible.
And this is a heroic act that begins chapter 2 of Exodus and literally gives birth to the possibility that the world could be different, that there will be a strong voice that will oppose Pharaoh.
Right. And it's a child.
And it's a child.
And that's, the children then have this role in our culture, which is quite remarkable. When a child, we had a bris the other day for a beautiful young baby, we all stand up because every child carries the possibility of redemption. Right. So then the baby's floating down the Nile, right? This is where the Prince of Egypt movie starts, right? And he is discovered, ironically, by the daughter of Pharaoh, the daughter of the guy who promulgated the policy of genocide, finds the baby. Now, here's what's wonderful about this chapter. You need to know a little Hebrew to know this chapter. 11 times in this chapter, the word ro'eh, the verb for to see, appears. The first one is when the birth mother, Yocheved, sees Kitov, that he has cosmic divinity, cosmic goodness, godliness in him. The next time it happens is when the daughter of Pharaoh goes down to the Nile and she sees the basket. Now that sounds prosaic, but think for a minute. First of all, she's the daughter of Pharaoh. So going down to the Nile means she's surrounded by her handmaids and by her Secret Service detail. But the only one who sees the basket is her. And then they bring her the basket. Now, if you have a basket in your arms and there's a baby in the basket, you don't need to take the top off the basket to know there's a baby in the basket. He's crying, but it says no. She takes the top off the basket and she sees. What does she see? Her father, who promulgated this genocide, wants her to see the same thing that Joseph Goebbels wanted to see when Germans saw Jewish children, an enemy, an alien, a pollutant, something dangerous. But she doesn't see that. What she sees instead is a baby, a crying baby. And then the Torah says, V'tachmol, she pities him, she bonds with him. She's a woman of childbearing age for some reason. She doesn't have kids, or we don't know about her. She bonds with this baby. And in case you didn't know, she actually says out loud, this must be a Hebrew baby. Right? Now, how did she know? The movie, it's the blanket. Right. It might be that he's circumcised. Doesn't matter. She knows it's a Hebrew baby. And yet she says, he's mine. I'm going to protect this child.
Such a great reference. 10 Commandments movie, Moses comes out with a little blanket, the red and black blanket, and then he points it when he meets his mother late in life. And the same blanket, the binding tie.
That's the binding tie. And if you know the Superman story,
the same exact
right?
thing.
His mother sews his outfit with the big, his S on it out of the blanket that she found him in the spaceship. So this is because it was a Jewish story.
So great, the binding tie. Pharaoh's daughter, I was going to call her Batya, because in Midrash, that's her name, right? The daughter of the water, essentially, the daughter of God, the daughter of, this prolific, strong woman. The daughter of Pharaoh sees Moses. We can understand her as either being the most obtuse character in the Torah.
No, the opposite.
Or the most brilliant, right? The most subversively smart understanding, because as soon as she finds Moses, the next strong woman walks up to her, Moses' sister, who's been standing in the reeds watching the scene unfold, and says to her, you don't look like you can feed this baby. I know somebody who can feed this baby.
Right.
Presumably, there's lots of Jewish mothers who have all just given birth, and their kids have been taken away from them. And there are mothers who are ready to feed babies. And Pharaoh's daughter, you would think, would say, I don't want this baby being put back in the Jewish village. She says the exact opposite, right? Take the baby, have the baby fed, I'll pay, and bring the baby back to the palace.
Yeah, because...
And Miriam brings the baby right back home.
Right.
And really, the ark then...
And what the Torah doesn't tell us is that moment. I mean, can you imagine?
Right.
This woman just put her kid in a basket and floated him up the Nile, thinking she'd never see him again. And a half an hour later, the daughter comes back with the same kid.
Right. No, Miriam drives up in a limousine.
Right.
A royal limousine, and says the baby is home, and you're going to be employed to feed this baby.
And the daughter of Pharaoh is going to raise him.
Right.
Because all the women in the story are infused with this power of life. The daughter of Pharaoh refuses to accept her father's propaganda, refuses to define this baby as a threat because he's a baby. And she bonds with him. There's a deep soul-to-soul bond. The mother, the birth mother, holds on to her son. The sister is willing to risk her life to step into the Egyptian domain in order to rescue him and reunite him with his mother. All of them have this incredible courage, but that's inspired by this incredible force of life, this force of life. And then, of course, the kid grows up. And whatever age he is, whatever age we wean, right? The kid grows up and he's weaned, and she brings him back to the daughter of Pharaoh. and he is going to be raised in the palace. And it says the daughter of Pharaoh named him. And she said, his name will be Moshe. And then it gives you a Hebrew definition of the name, Ki miramayim mishitihu, because from the water I schlepped him out. I took him out. But the actual name, Moses, is an Egyptian name. Moses, Masas, means son of. This really means junior, right? If you take the name of Ra, the god of the sun god, Ra, and you add Masas, you have Ramses, right? Son of Ra. Masas just means sonny boy. It means junior. That becomes his name. And that's going to be emblematic because we're about to, when we start talking about his character, he's going to have two mothers. He has two homes. He has two identities. He has two names. One mother is a slave woman. One mother is a princess. One home is in the slave quarters. One home is in the palace. One identity is Prince of Egypt. One identity is son of slaves. One name, Moshe, is a Hebrew name. One name, Moshe, is an Egyptian name. And the great question is, which identity will he choose?
So even to complicate matters even farther, and again, I don't mean to spoil the story for people, but his two mothers are very much in that world of Egypt at odds with each other. And his two fathers in the story, you have God and you have Yitro, both kind of portray very different images of spirituality.
Yeah.
And so Moses is a person that stands kind of at this four directions compass in where his life is going to go.
Right.
And you can say, well, everybody is pouring into Moses they're depositing all of the best of the world into him, right? He's somebody who's given every privilege of Egyptian culture, which is the highest society, highest culture of its time.
They went to private school.
Went to private school, right? Learned to fence, and he was on the rowing team, and it's everything all wrapped up into one. And on top of it, inside of him, deep inside of him, are all of these Jewish values,
right,
that have been fed to him by his birth mother in his toddler years.
And of course, what's going to happen, again, not to give away the ending, of course. So he's raised in the palace as the son of the daughter of Pharaoh. That Pharaoh, later in the story, is going to die. And the Pharaoh of the Exodus story is the next generation, which means it's his sort of half-brother.
Right.
So that Moses and Pharaoh are shadow images of each other, in the same way that the two mothers are shadow images of each other, in the same way that the two homes, the palace and the slave quarters, are shadow images of each other. And the struggle, when you think of the struggle between Pharaoh and Moses as a struggle between brothers, between which father do you worship, and a struggle between these two ways of being that are deeply related to each other and yet they're opposites. It becomes such an interesting family dynamic and a powerful, powerful story, an apposition.
So the Torah doesn't describe Moses' brother's ponytail, but I see it, right, because of the movie.
Oh, Yul Brynner.
Yul Brynner's ponytail. And that's the best part of the movie to me, is that Yul Brynner has a ponytail. Everybody in the whole movie has ponytails. Moses has curly hair. So what are we talking about here? Of course he doesn't belong with this family.
I said in the cartoon version,
yeah,
Rafe Fiennes is Pharaoh.
That's right.
And Val Kilmer is Moses. So, he has a fighter jet and
right. And a Batman voice.
And a Batman voice.
That's how we imagine our Jewish
two guys
hero.
who spend too much time watching movies.
That's right. Well, I hope this has been a little bit more hopeful and a little bit more promising than previous episodes talking about slavery and genocide. And we look forward into delving into Moses' life with you in the weeks to come, because with Moses comes the promise of Jewish freedom and a relationship with God and a better tomorrow.
Does life prevail? That's the great question. Does life prevail? Still a great question in the world.
See you soon.
Thanks for listening.